Hey there, what's up? This is Fragments of Memory, aka your friendly neighborhood armchair philosopher. Just had a birthday, so I'm another year older. Yay me! And as I'm getting older, I find myself examining the things that I was taught as a young man. I find myself examining and re-examining and unpacking and pulling apart sometimes and just wondering, oh my goodness, and then comparing and contrasting that with the things that people are doing now and the things that I've discovered in my life on this planet. And then, of course, I find myself a lot these days trying to reconcile the paradoxes of what I was taught versus what I actually faced. Now, growing up, I've mentioned this often. I've had a Protestant evangelical Christian upbringing. You know, I was taught to look both ways before crossing the street, respect my elders, say my prayers, give thanks for the food I was about to eat, have good manners, the whole shebang. I was born in 1980, so for those keeping score, I'm 37 now. So I grew up during the time of the Reagan-Bush era, because Reagan wins the election in 1980 against Jimmy Carter. He gets sworn in 81, and then from that until 84, and then of course he wins for re-election. I'm stammering here, never mind. And of course he's president for 4 more years, so he had an 8-year run. And then 4 years after that, you had his vice president, George Herbert Walker Bush. Not Bush, not W, but Papa Bush. And then he was president until Bill Clinton got the office. And the point of me saying all that is this. In the 1980s and even in the early 90s, you had Nancy Reagan spearheading the Just Say No campaign. So the 80s was more conservative than it is now. I'll just say it that way. And I saw this reflected in the cartoons I watched, in the TV sitcoms I watched, even in some of the things I was taught in school. Like, for example, Pledge of Allegiance. We said the Pledge of Allegiance every day. So when I saw an argument about the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe some years back, I was like, why are we even having this argument? We used to say the Pledge of Allegiance all the time. I was shown that rebellion of any kind will be put down because I was taught that you trust your authority figures. You don't argue with the teacher, even if she's wrong. That's what I was taught. Was taught to do well in school, get a good education, get a good, in order to be prepared to face a job market. And of course that, again, those in power had your best interests at heart. Now, these things would be challenged as I got older. And again, I still find myself wrestling with the contradictions and the paradoxes. Now, I talked about this as it related to women in another video, but I talk about it just in general as life. We tell people, hey, go to school, get this good education, get this good job. But we don't tell them the dark side, which is, oh yes, but if you didn't have a scholarship or a grant or a rich uncle or whatever the case might be, you may end up in debt, whether you get the degree or not. Being smacked with reality that what we are taught isn't always true, or it isn't always applicable to every single situation. And I find as I get older that life is very messy, it's filled with contradictions, and that context is everything. And I think that life is filled with various subtleties and nuances. It's not all cut and dry. There's this messiness, and stuff overlaps and intertwines and intersects and even are parallel to one another. We're all coming from some place, which I've remarked in another video, was we're all coming from some place. Like I say, for me, I grew up in the church. I would join the Fahami movement at 20, and I learned a lot about self-development and cultivation in that. I became a Muslim at the age of 26, going on 27. So it was like 2 months or a month before my 27th birthday. So I can remember how those things had an effect on me. And even with the changes and even with the things I've met in life, there's still parts of me that cling to a more traditionalist, conservative view, even though the world is a whole different place. So that's just something I've really been racking my brain lately with, is just the contradictions and the paradoxes of this world and of people and of society and the like. Well, that's just my 2 cents on it. Tell me what you think. Do you feel that contradictions, can you deal with the contradictions? Can you deal with the it's seeming one way, but really it's a whole other thing? Well, tell me what you think. Peace.